Is IKEA successful because they understand good game design? And all my Swedish viewers out there, I know, I'm pronouncing it incorrectly.
This is how you pronounce IKEA in Swedish. IKEA.
It would sound even worse if I tried, so thank you for bearing with me. IKEA, it's one of the most successful companies in the world, and if you live even remotely close to one of its nearly 300 stores, then you probably own a Billy or a Lack or a Boomerang. I own quite a few, boomerangs that is. IKEA is a modern marvel of capitalism. It consumes 1% of the world's wood supply, somehow manages to drop its prices 2 to 3% every single year, and has made its founder Ingvar Kamprad one of the wealthiest people on the planet. So if you're in business school, you can probably identify lots of reasons why IKEA has taken over the world, specifically their mighty triumvirate of quality, price, and speed. But if you're a game show fan, you're probably wondering, why on earth are we talking about IKEA?
Stay a while and listen.
Intentionally or not, IKEA embodies some of the best values of good games. I'm not saying that IKEA is a game per se, but it exhibits many game-like characteristics. I've talked about Dutch cultural historian Johan Huizinga in the past, and his big idea that play undergirds all forms of human interaction. And if that's true, then all of a sudden we can start looking at the world through the lens of game design. And personally, I believe if you understand games, you can understand the world. So let's test that idea with IKEA. Okay, first, IKEA stores have incredible level design. Stores like Target or Tesco are just designed with big aisles, and most furniture stores are just pods of showrooms stuffed together. But IKEA has taken the first page from any good game designer's playbook, making a good maze. As game designer Ernst Adams said of Colossal Cave Adventure, a maze should be attractive, clever, and above all, fun to solve. If a maze isn't interesting or a pleasure to be in, then it's a bad feature.
Well, this was a disappointment.
But IKEA doesn't call their layout a maze. They actually call it the long, natural way. Unlike other stores, the main aisle of IKEA is supposed to curve every 50 feet or so to keep customers interested in the new and beautiful showrooms. A path that's straight for any longer than that, IKEA calls an Autobahn. Or put another way, big and boring. This path through IKEA creates what's called organized walking. Now, from the top down, the store layout doesn't look like a particularly complicated maze, right? But if you were to look at any Call of Duty single player map, for example, you'd see the same type of simplicity. And that's the trick with both IKEA and Call of Duty's level design. It's easy enough just to walk through, but they provide other challenges along the way. And you know IKEA has good design because it's as architecture professor Alan Penn says, IKEA is highly disorienting, and yet there is only one route to follow. That's why the shortcuts through the showroom are so rewarding. They're like your magic whistle through the map, while also giving you a sense of discovery of entering a whole new realm.
There it is, the shortcut, the hidden shortcut. We made it.
The end result of all of this walking and getting lost? Buying stuff you didn't know you wanted. 60% of the purchases at IKEA are impulse buys in its serpentine hallways. You might say that IKEA has its own loot cave. Of course, there are other places that use unique retail design to get you to buy stuff, but another big thing IKEA does differently from its competitors is create a story world through language. Because IKEA's founder is dyslexic, they built a whole taxonomy for products to help him to remember. Furniture is Swedish place names, chairs are men's names, and children's items are mammals and birds. The act of naming an object is an incredibly powerful key to immersion that games use all the time. For IKEA, they want you to identify with a specific place, in this case, the Swedish concept of folkhemmet, a social democratic term meaning the people's home. And they do this the same way that Borderlands doesn't just call a pistol, it's the Lacerator or the Dove or the Chiquito Amigo or Athena's Wisdom. IKEA doesn't just sell you a coffee table, it sells you a Lack or a Lillebron or a Love Backen. As writers Joshua Glenn and Rob Walker wrote, once you start to increase the emotional energy of inanimate objects, an unpredictable chain reaction is set off.
Holy bitch! That's a freaking Black Lotus! That's an album freaking
does. But it's not just a showroom that works like a game. IKEA engages in what's called value co-production, or put another way, interactivity. This is a concept that's bigger than just the store and actually lies at the heart of why we have such an attachment to IKEA. It's obvious, but you have to build your own stuff when you buy it at IKEA. There are economic reasons for this, of course. It's just cheaper to ship deconstructed items. But researchers found that self-construction is at the heart of what they call the IKEA effect, which suggests that people will value mass-produced items as much as handcrafted artisan wares, but only if they're the ones building them piece by frustrating piece.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's not easy. And Lily, you're no help whatsoever.
Here's the kicker though. To do this right, an IKEA designer uses the same tool a good game designer might. Balance. We value the time spent with video games and IKEA furniture because they give us a sense of mastery. Psychologists actually call this effort justification. But in order for IKEA to get us to do this in the first place, the difficulty settings of the experience have to be perfectly tuned. If the home assembly process is too hard, then we are never shopping at IKEA ever again. I mean, it might be cheaper for IKEA just to give you pieces of wood and you can make a chair yourself, but then they've lost a customer. Likewise, if a game is too hard, then we're probably gonna give up before the end.
This game is impossible. No one can beat it. Anyone who does is a maniac with way too much time on their hands.
Game makers have a name for that balance too. It's called flow, the mental state of operation in which a person performing an activity is fully immersed in a task, and it occurs in that sweet spot between challenge and skill. And that's what IKEA does so well. They balance the economic desire to save money against the odds that you completely throw in the towel and cry in the shower in frustration. Kinda like I do when I play swing copters.
It all makes sense, but I still suck.
Okay, last one. IKEA develops universally understandable experiences. This is something that we take for granted in games, but think about it this way. What if you couldn't play Tetris because you didn't speak Russian, or Super Mario Galaxy because you didn't understand Japanese game mechanics? Games are their own language and can be played by anyone regardless of their nationality, location, or background. IKEA has a similar idea about decorating your home. They call it democratic design. They try to take their designs to everyone in the world and design products that ostensibly could fit in any living room from Shanghai to Berlin to Los Angeles. It's the exact same type of experience that Genova Chen wanted to make in Journey. Chen argues that the language that we use is a facade and that games like Journey can be played by anyone, anywhere, because they don't use language. And that's the exact same for chess and Netrunner and basketball. When designed well, games are exemplars of democratic design the world over. So there you have it. That's what I think about whenever I go to IKEA, and I hope that I showed that games can open our eyes to new ways of seeing the world. And look, I'm not saying that these game design elements justify some of the more problematic elements of IKEA's existence, many of which Mike from Idea Channel so elegantly outlined in his episode on the company. But hopefully I've given you some new tools to look at your everyday life in a different way. So what do you think? Does IKEA have some powerful game-like qualities? If you like the concept of the episode, what other experiences should I explore through the lens of game design? Casinos, the Apple Store, politics, education? Hash it out in the comments, and if you like what you saw, please subscribe. I'll see you next week. Last week, we asked why we celebrate football violence but demonize video game violence. Let's see what you had to say. First and foremost, before we get started, we received a wonderful gift from a viewer named Ian. It is a copy of E.T. the Extraterrestrial for the Atari 2600. This game also holds the dubious distinction of single-handedly causing the video game crash of 1983. You can read about it, obviously, on Wikipedia. They're making a documentary about it. So I guess it's kind of a passive-aggressive good luck gift. Nonetheless, I'm gonna put it up on the wall. Give me one sec. All right, there we go. If you have any suggestions for things that you would like to see on our wall, hit us up on Twitter, Facebook, or send us an email. In a comment so brilliant that I'm angry at myself that I didn't make it myself, 3X Gaming makes an amazing point, pointing out that really the difference between video game violence and football violence is an expression of the divide between jocks and geeks, with football representing jocks, obviously, and video games representing geeks. And just like high school, jocks get a free pass and geeks get picked on. So that's a really great observation. Elite Delta 135 and a bunch of others of you referred to American football as hand egg. which has just destroyed everything that I thought about this sport that I loved, and I will be watching the game in an entirely different respect now. So thank you for that. Permafry42 adds a gendered element to the conversation, specifically asking why things need to be violent in order for them to be considered masculine. This is something I actually explored in our episode on masculinity and video games. And so in that respect, both football and video games do suffer from the same kind of cultural baggage, the expectation that expressions of masculinity have to involve physical contact. I do obviously enjoy the sport of football, but if it was less contact driven, I think I probably would still like it. But yeah, that's a great twist on the question I asked. Kraken, Minecrafts and Stuff says that if you don't play a lot of video games, then the things that happen in games are going to seem really shocking. Just like if you don't watch American football, then the things that happen in American football are going to seem really shocking to you as well. Kraken adds this great cultural twist to the argument, specifically that where you are, how you've grown up, what you're used to seeing absolutely affects how you're conditioned to think about violence, particularly in the context of games and sport. So for example, in Central Asia, there's a game called Buzkashi, where men drag around a goat carcass from horses. To someone, who's not from there, it might seem really barbaric, but obviously if you grew up playing the game, you're not necessarily going to think that's the case. The more problematic, the more troubling implication of what Kraken's saying is that the undercurrent of violence is so central to the American self-conscious that we're not even capable of noticing that it's happening. And that's maybe a little bit more scary. But yeah, thanks for the comment. It's a great opinion. Eric Carlson wanted to know why I focus on a sport like American football and not on a sport like boxing or MMA, where it's more obvious that you have two men who are just bludgeoning each other with their hands. The big reason is just the popularity of the sport of football. Neither boxing nor MMA are even close. I mean, the NFL is having games in London now. There's like talks of like franchising it to other places in the world. So it's just a sense of scale. Craven THC and a bunch of others of you took issue with the fact that I said that there's a mountain of academic research that demonstrates that video games make you more violent. I was only alluding to the amount of research, not the quality of that research, because I personally don't think that there's a connection between video games and violence. Not to mention there's all these other competing studies that demonstrate the exact opposite. So just one that was just released in Australia and has kind of been making the rounds. We'll link to it in the description. Regardless, I think that the connections between media, any form of media, video games or otherwise, and violence is incredibly difficult to study because it's hard to pinpoint what that exact connection sort of looks like. Frankly, I think it's a distraction from other issues. And I think a lot of times this research is sort of used as a way to blame something that shouldn't be blamed.